After years of official radio silence, we finally receive a crumb of news for the Amazon plus Games Workshop plus Henry Cavill Warhammer 40k television series. And it really is a crumb too, and not a particularly tasty one either. In fact, it's a rather foreboding little crumb in my opinion that does not bode particularly well for the Warhammer 40k television series. So, let's get into it. The only real official news we get is the name of the guy writing it, which is Mike Flanagan here, who, having completed initial outlines, should soon be moving on to script. Oh, that is classic GW, isn't it? In case you've forgotten, by the way, 'cause it's been a while, this project was announced in December 2022. And just now, over halfway through 2026, have we finished the initial outlines. God help us all. Okay, so this means one out of two things. Either this project was announced before it was even on the planning table, which is a theoretical possibility, as I speculated at the time as well. It seemed as if Cavill made the announcement rather ahead of time, maybe to make sure that it would actually go through and put some public pressure out there. Entirely conceivable. But there have also been other rumors that I've been privy to, and I've speculated in the past that one of the reasons why there seems to be so little go-ahead for the show is because Amazon was having a very hard time finding somebody actually able and are willing to write a 40,000 television series. As, it's not the usual kind of fare they've got over at Amazon. They tend to be more into the political nonsense rather than action and shooty bang bang. And the guy they finally got, Mike Flanagan, well, I worry that he's gonna be one of those guys who wishes to present his story in somebody else's universe. But first and foremost, we should also mention the Henry Cavill news. What little there is of it, as the only real mention here is Warhammer 40,000 superfan Henry Cavill will remain involved as they have been for some time. That's it. Henry Cavill is somewhere doing something, presumably tangentially related to this. Maybe, possibly. In reality, his only real involvement in this project right now is probably being on a mailing list that's updated 3 times a year, if that. All of the emails being, by the way, headline, hey, can we keep using your name? Because you're the only reason anybody's even excited for this nonsense, so, we cool. But okay, let's move on to the writer then, Mike Flanagan. So, he's primarily, indeed damn near exclusively known and famous for writing horror movies and TV shows, including being connected to the upcoming DC Clayface film, which many people have pointed this out already, but that is one heck of a weird segue, considering where DC is in its timeline right now. A Clayface movie? An entire movie? And again, don't get me wrong, you could absolutely do something with Clayface, but, how? Okay, anyways, but horror. Okay, so, horror obviously could work incredibly well in 40k, but they tried this before. Those of you with a long memory may remember Warhammer Horror. So this was supposed to be a new little kind of a subgenre released over on the Black Library, the book publishing arm of Games Workshop, which was intended to focus on horror-related content. This came out in 2018, 19? It wasn't even the 2020, so it's been a while. It released a few books, none of which did particularly well, none of them took off. They were either too 40k for the horror fans or too horror-y for the 40k fans, as whilst in theory, Warhammer 40,000 should be fertile grounds of horror stories, I mean, the Tyranids are pretty terrifying, Necrons are pretty awful, and Chaos, you would think that would be an endless wellspring of horror stories, but at the end of the day, 40k is an action kind of setting, and the moment you put a bolt gun or a space marine in a horror story, you know, the terror kind of disappears, frankly. Which is a bit of the problem. Furthermore, we are so familiar with the various set pieces, and we are so familiar to view these set pieces like Space Marines, Chaos, Demons, etc. from a strategy perspective that making effective horror out of it is really gosh darn difficult. So, the optimistic interpretation of this news is that Amazon and Games Workshop themselves, and maybe even Henry Cavill, if he could be roused to answer his emails on these things, may have thought, well, there is tremendous potential in horror for Warhammer, if only it could be done well, and probably in a visual medium, so let's get an expert on this to come write a horror 40k TV show for us. Okay, I see the potential, but here's the somewhat more pessimistic interpretation. Mike Flanagan is a filmmaker that has very left-wing acquaintances. He himself seems to not be overtly, directly involved in politics, but he has gotten more and more so political over the years, and his buddies, like people like Mark Hamill, Stephen King, people that he has been working with frequently and are well acquainted with, are far left-wingers. Mike Flanagan himself stated, after Donald Trump's election, that it was time to get political, and that he regretted not getting more political earlier. Also mentioning here that he wanted to do like, that if you do a zombie movie that talks about racism, you can make that as a subversive plot point without speaking about it directly. So here we have a horror director who thinks a lot about politics, who have already produced 2 very political television series, who are anti-capitalism, all for equality, horrified by the cultural of inequality that we have today, yada yada yada, the usual, and who now believes that it is impossible to stay silent. We can raise these ideas in a form that reaches a huge number of people, added Flanagan, and that gets the idea onto the table through this delivery system of an entertaining genre. But if you want to tell a story about racism in America, you can make that a movie, you can tell that story, and let people seek it out, either agree with you going in or are curious to hear that conversation going in. But if you make a Night of the Living Dead, the people coming in want to see a zombie movie, and they get it, and it's scary, and it's great, and when they're driving home, realizing they're thinking about racism in America, with again the anti-capitalist nonsense going on as well. Consumption homicidal. At what point is it that consumption is homicidal? So again, this is a person who feels right now that his politics are more important than ever because of the Trump-philophagus, who have argued for putting in subversive messages in other genres specifically to put them in there and cause conversations because of the genre they are in, who is vehemently anti-capitalist, who is all for pure meritocracy, not meritocracy, excuse me, equality, which is the exact opposite of meritocracy again, and who wants to talk more about politics, being put on a Warhammer 40k television series as a horror expert. I mentioned earlier that I thought, and I've speculated about this in previous videos on this subject too, that Amazon were having a really hard time finding somebody either willing to write a 40k television series or able to do it, because, well, this would kind of preclude their ability to write their usual fan fiction, especially with somebody like Henry Cavill on the team. hopefully, anyways. And here we have now a guy who wishes specifically, explicitly, to use different mediums to put a political message that has no previous history with 40k, or making anything that would seem to fit with 40k, being hired after years of nothing happening and only having now recently produced the outlines of a script, being placed on the 40k television series. That sounds a lot to me like he was the only guy who raised his hand and managed to produce a piece that was subtly subversive enough to both please Amazon's desire for politics and also 40k enough to pass at least the initial round of censors. That's what it sounds like to me. And again, we shouldn't judge entirely by acquaintances, but all of the people he usually works with are at best politically neutral, and most of them are frothing at the mouth progressives. He himself does indeed appear to be a frothing at the mouth progressive, and I have yet to meet a creative progressive that is willing to put the medium, the thing that he's making, like a 40k TV show, over and above his own politics. I haven't seen it yet, not in any setting, no matter how large or well established. And if this'll be the first time, then good, but I'd be fucking surprised. So, there's all the, on the other hand, not to get too black-pilled here, at least there is news, because some of you may remember the Eisenhorn TV series. You remember that one? Announced in, 2019. And the only thing we ever heard about it was that it was in production. And then it was never mentioned ever again. Games Workshop have a bit of a history of announcing things and then, never talking about them. Ever. And just letting them die by the wayside. So the fact that there is news is heartening. The fact that there is so little news, and that the only news is that they've hired a guy who is very, very expressly political, and that wishes to get more political, and a guy, again, that has only now recently completed the initial outlines, which indicates yet again that he was only recently brought onto the team. Listen, I've argued many times that we should be a bit careful to rush to conclusions and start shouting woke at a thing long before we know anything about it, but the pieces are kind of lining up right now, as it's a strange genre for 40k, one they've tried before and failed at, which makes me wonder why Games Workshop would sign up on it. The script was only produced very, 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 very recently, after it's been in production for 2 to 3 years, indicating that they only brought this guy on just the other day. Either Amazon and everybody just thought that the project didn't need a writer, or he's the latest in a long list of potential people, or Amazon has simply, again, as I mentioned, struggled to actually find a writer. And Henry Cavill's role in all of this remains extraordinarily diffuse. And there's been all kinds of rumors, most of them made up out of whole cloth, about Henry Cavill's involvement. I'll be honest with you, the truth of the matter is in all due likelihood that he isn't really involved. He gets an update every now and then, maybe he's asked for some feedback occasionally, which is routinely, roundly, and completely ignored, or he's only really signed on to this as a potential name for a future casting. As, the man's busy too. He's not exactly free at the moment, so he's not sitting in a writing studio anywhere. He isn't teaching 40k lore to Mike Flanagan right now. He isn't browbeating Amazon executives over the head with the need to actually make this a 40k television series, first and foremost, rather than their usual political fare. He's off filming other movies, working on other projects, and his name is being used pretty much exclusively to hype up some interest in this TV show. I'm not thrilled by this news, and I'm not thrilled by this choice. I would have preferred to see somebody with more of chops within the action genre, as that is where 40k is most comfortable. I do applaud the fact that this probably means we're not seeing Space Marines. As I've said again, we really should keep the Space Marines for a bit later, a later entry into the 40k cinematic universe, rather than dump people straight into the oversized blue boots of an Ultra Smurf, which would be the only option. You know it, I know it, everybody knows it. And again, the theoretical possibility of a more grounded, horror-based 40k, again, I like it. I like the idea of it, and it could be an excellent entry point for people who are brand new. A heavily character-focused story, introducing you to the world slowly, on a Hive City, for example. And then you slowly begin to see the corruption seeping in. If done well and cleverly, you can have an amazing show out of that, no doubt, but optimism hasn't exactly been a rewarding position the last decade, now has it? So, cautious, very, very cautious optimism. Do let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below, if I'm being too alarmist, or indeed not alarmist enough. And if you think that Henry Cavill is actually involved in any meaningful way at the moment, or if indeed his name is used primarily as a, well, billboard title right now. And also, if you read any of the Warhammer 40k horror books, as, again, all I've really heard about them is that some of them were good, others were absolute pure garbage, but none of them really captured the 40k feel or the potential of the setting and the genre. Until next time, I've been Arch. Thank you all very much for watching, and I do hope to see you all again soon. Till then, have a good day.